He abides within, there at the cross where he took me in. Glory to him. I'm singing glory to his name.
When we talked about the disparity of wealth, that as black people, we didn't have enough stock equity. We weren't in the stock market enough to gain over the last 30 to 40 years. If we had been in that market the way the other groups were, we would have been more wealthy now. And then, of course, for those of us who are lucky enough to have a home, we have gained some equity in that home. But there's still a lot of people that do not have a home. Matter of fact, the statistics say 40% of Americans own a home. That means that 60% of Americans do not own a home. Okay, so there are a lot of people who are, living in apartments and things of that sort. And so once you start buying a home, then that's when they refer to you as a home owner. You may not have even paid for it yet, but you are a home owner. So we're going to talk about creating generational wealth, concentrating on the home, property, any kind of property or real estate that you have. So, your home can be a single residence home, a townhouse, condominium, rental houses, Verbo, Airbnb, any kind of thing like that. When we say home, that's what we're talking about. So let's look at the benefits of owning a home. When we talk about owning a home, and I think you all have the handouts so you can follow as I go along. One of the biggest investments that many of us will ever make. A lot of us will be fortunate enough maybe to start a business and have a successful business. And some of us may do some wise investing, especially if we start younger, and create a lot of wealth through the stock market. So those are big. But for many people, buying a home and owning a home is going to be the biggest investment we ever make. So that means we have to really take care of, be careful of what we're buying, making sure that we're making a good investment in the home, taking care of that home. You need to treat that home like a golden goose, okay? That's your future. That's the future money that you're going to have, okay? So that's one of the biggest investments, a home, and it allows you to build equity and wealth. Just like one of the insurance presentations talked about, for those people who had gotten a whole life insurance policy some 20 or 30 years ago, they now have a balance of wealth, as opposed to those like me and Reverend Jackson who just bought term insurance. We spent 20, 25 years paying for it now. At least we said that we were covered during that time, right, Reverend Jackson? Okay. But if we could go back, like Tyrone Davis used to say, if I could turn back the hands of time, yeah, things would be a lot different. But for the home, you're going to be here and you want to live comfortably, so you may as well invest in a home. And I realize many of you here tonight probably already have a home, but we're gonna speak to you because there may be some people who have not purchased a home or not purchasing a home right now. So a lot of you will probably hear some of the things that you already know, but please indulge me while I go over many of the things so that those who don't have a home can benefit from it. Okay? Another benefit, possible tax savings. Okay, you can save on your taxes by way of a tax deduction by how much property tax or mortgage interest you pay each year on your home. And as was brought forth in our 12 o'clock session today, your home can also serve as your business. When you have a business in your home, you can declare 1 or 2 rooms as part of the house that operates that business. And if 40% of your house is dealing with that business, then you can take off 40% of your electricity, but you can on 40% of your electricity bill, 40% of your cable bill, your Wi-Fi bill, your water bill, all of that, because it's part of the house, and that 40% of your house you're using for your business is tax deductible. Okay, so it can save you some money taxes that way. Okay? And the last point there is property rights. Property rights is saying, this is my house. This is my house. This is my yard. This is my driveway. Tell the kids, get off my grass. Get off this is my house. Yeah. But you can't do that when you live in an apartment or someplace like that. So that's another benefit. So as we go on to the next slide, yes. Benefits of homeowner gives you a better quality of life. That quality of life can come in the form of more living space for you. The home that you buy could be bigger or smaller than the apartment that you had, but most times it's a little bigger. You have more space, and you have more outside space. You have a yard, a backyard, a front yard. You can fence in your backyard. If you have children, your children can go in the backyard and play safely without worrying about things too much. You can have more privacy because, especially if you have a single residence home, nobody is really attached to the walls of your house. Now, you can have a townhouse or a condominium where the units are still attached, okay? But in a single residence home, you're going to have more privacy. And you're going to have a safe environment for you and your children, hopefully. Not 100%. You got to make sure that the neighborhood that your house is in is a fairly safe neighborhood. And, sadly, there can be some neighborhoods that are not too safe. But you want to try your best to get a house in a neighborhood that is safe, where everybody there are responsible people and conducts their lives in a good way. And also, a home provides stability for your family. There's a good feeling that you have when you know that you have a house and this is your house. All right? It might not be a big palace, but what you have is yours. When you go on a trip and you spend several days away from home, you say, man, I can't wait to get back home because that's your home. And so it gives you that good feeling. And, of course, then you're able to pass that home on to other generations if you decide to do so. Okay? So, with all that being said, we're going to, well, one point, I did mention the point that you could use your home as a business, because that's another benefit. I thought I had forgotten that. So, we're going to talk about some buying tips for those who are going to buy a home. And although most of you probably have a home right now and you say, well, I'm never going to buy another house. Well, you might want to buy another house in the future for various reasons. Because you may become so wealthy, you're going to say, I'm going to step up and buy something a little bigger, a little better, more amenities in it. You might decide to sell the house you got because you got a master bedroom on the second floor, and your back is giving you a little bit of problems now. So you might decide to go to a single-level house so that to ease your pain a little bit so you won't have to convert the dining room into a bedroom if you have surgery or something. Some people have done that. Some people had to do it, okay? And also, if you decide to move in retirement, move to another house, move to another state, you're going to buy another house. Or invest in some rental property, buy an Airbnb, a Vrbo. My wife and I went to Gatlinburg this past weekend, and we stayed at a Vrbo house in Gatlinburg. It was like a condominium, but it was very nice. 2-bedroom, 2-bath. It was really nice. And when I travel, I really like staying in a condo rather than a hotel room. A hotel room just is too tight for me. But I do what I have to do. Something like flying in first class on the plane, Reverend Jackson. So, we're going to talk about prices of homes. In the last 40 years, according to the Federal Housing Finance Agency, the last 15 years, from 2008 to 2023, homes have doubled in price. And all of you know that we saw a big jump in price after the COVID pandemic. They have always been rising over the years. If you buy a home, it's going to eventually go up in value. And the other thing that's causing it to go up in value now is the shortage of homes. And so you've heard about people competing for homes. I mean, you go out and you're looking for a home, you see a home that you like, you better be able to get it that day. And you almost need to have a cash offer because somebody else will come behind you the next day with a cash offer and buy that home. Okay, and so let me ask, are there any realtors in the audience today? Any realtors? Okay. We had one at 12 o'clock, and she helped me out a great deal with some information. And so, okay, just wanted to know that. So, but yeah, shortage of homes, and so right now you hear one of the presidential candidates, Vice President Kamala Harris, saying that if she becomes president, she's going to build 3 million more homes. She can't do it alone. Congress has to do it. But adding more homes because, the baby boomers were part of the largest generation for a good while. And the baby boomers then had children. They became the Gen X, and then now we got the millennials. And so there are a lot of people that want homes, but there are not enough homes. And the people who own the homes now are taking a good advantage of that. That's why the prices are going up so much. Okay, so your home equity can also be used for what we call the home equity loan. That's a loan, and a line of credit on your house is the same as a home equity loan. If you have a home that you may have bought for $250,000 and you've already paid it down to $150,000, and suddenly you need to pay for a roof replacement or some kind of other large project around your house, you need $25,000, then you can go to your bank or mortgage company and get a home equity loan. You don't have to get the home equity loan to do that. If you got cash to pay for it, then you should go ahead and pay for it cash. But if you go to any other financial institution to borrow money to pay for that project, you're going to probably pay somewhere in the area of about 12% interest. Whereas with a home equity loan, you're going to be a lot lower than that, anywhere between maybe 4 and 8% interest. Okay? So your home is, that's a benefit of having a home. You also can do a mortgage refinance to benefit yourself. And when you refinance your home, it really is like buying your home all over again. And you got to be real careful with refinancing your home because the same example, if you have a $250,000 home, you've already paid $100,000, $150,000. You have paid $100,000 because you have $150,000 left, and so you need a lump sum of money to do something that's very important. You can refinance that home. You can refinance that home to get the money. And so you got to be careful with that because the terms start all over again. Whatever the interest rate is at that time, that's the rate you will have to have. Now, if you already have a 3% interest on your home and you refinance it and the rate is 6% now, then you're going to have to pay more interest. So you probably don't want to use that. That's when you probably want to go to a home equity loan. But if you can go down 2%, okay? If you have a home interest rate right now that's 5%, and now the interest rates go to 3%, then it's worth it to go ahead and refinance your home, go down 2 more percentages, okay? Because that's the amount you'll be paying for the rest of the loan. And you have the option to tell the mortgage or bank, I've already paid 10 years on this loan, so I don't want to pay any more years. I want to pay the rest out in 20 years, okay? So, but you got to be careful with that because you may refinance the home and pay for that and then start building up debt again. So home and property can be passed on to your next generation. And so we had a question at the 12 o'clock session talking about passing down the home and property. And basically, if you have a will, and we're going to cover a lot of this in the session which talks about estate planning, then you will be able to pass that property and home down to your descendants, whatever way you want to. If you do not have a will, your property will become heirs' property, and everybody who they list as a descendant will have a share of that heirs' property. Okay? So, any questions so far? Okay. So, in buying a home, next slide, please. Okay. Looks like my presentation may have skipped a slide. We want to determine, go to the next slide if you would. There you go. Okay, all right. You want to determine how much house you can afford. And in able to do that, the housing costs should be no more than 30% of your net income. Now, what's included in the housing cost is the principal payment of your house, the interest, the taxes, insurance, and then this other thing called PMI, private mortgage insurance. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's called your comfort zone, because going above that can possibly get you into an area where you would be house poor. All right? You might have heard that term before. House poor just means that you're paying all your bills, making your house payment every month, but after you pay all your rest of your bills, you really don't have any money left, any spare money to do a lot with. And so that's what house poor means. You don't want to get yourself in that situation. So in terms of looking for a house, get a house that you can afford. A lot of times our eyes will get real big when we're looking for a house, especially if we go to a lot of model homes, and the model home is just beautiful. You walk through there and you say, man, I like that, I like that, I like that. And if your credit is good and your income is pretty good, the finance company will probably approve you for a home, much more than what you probably should get. Okay? Now, as realtors, we like to tell people, especially if they're kind of young people, to buy as much home as you can. And with young people, we tell them that because their incomes are going to consistently rise through the years. Okay? And so 10 years after they've bought that house, they may be saying, man, I sure wish we would have gotten a 2-car garage instead of a single-car garage. Wish we had gotten more square footage. I wish we had done this. I wish we had done that. So if you can afford to buy more house and stay in that comfort zone, that's what's advisable for you to do. Okay? Now back up a slide, I think, because I think I had my slides kind of mixed up. There we go. So when we start looking at getting a home, they're going to want to know, are you ready to buy a home? And they're going to look at the bank or mortgage company is going to look at your debt-to-income ratio. And your debt-to-income ratio is basically your total amount of debt divided by your gross income. Okay? And you can do that calculation for yourself just to see where you are right now in terms of debt-to-income ratio. If that debt-income ratio is above 36%, they're gonna be a little skittish with you. They like it to be 36% or less, and they definitely don't want it to be over 43%, because I doubt if you would get approved for the loan if you went over 43%. So that's a key factor that they're going to look at in buying a home. And then back to the credit score. We talked about this when we talked about our debt reduction presentation. Your credit scores run from 300 to 850. You would need to have a credit score of about 650 to almost guarantee you a home approval loan. There are situations where you can still get a home if your credit score is maybe about 580 to or above. But in that instance, you would need to get the kind of loan where the government would back that loan, such as an FHA loan. And so for a conventional loan, they're going to want you to have a credit score of about 650. Okay? All right, next slide. What you're going to want to do when you start looking for a house, you're going to want to get a pre-approval from a bank. You can go to the next slide. That's where you go to the mortgage company or your bank, express your interest that you're looking to buy a home and you want to get pre-approved. They will then start looking, get information from you, look at your debt-to-income ratio. They look at your bank account to see how much money is in your bank account, savings account. They want to know that you can make a reasonable down payment. And so, but it helps you to know how much money, how much house you can afford. And that's real important because you're going to eventually get with a realtor to help you find a home. And there's no need wasting the realtor's time or a lot of your time looking at houses that you like, but you can't afford that house. So it's going to know how much house you can afford. It helps your realtor find the right home for you. It helps you get your house under contract faster because, you know, we talked about how it's so competitive with people buying homes now that if you see the home that you really like and you can afford it, you need to act really fast in getting a contract on that home and getting the seller to accept the contract on that home. And it saves time in processing your mortgage because they've already started getting a lot of financial information on you such that when you start to really get in the contract and buy the home, there won't be a lot for them to do. Okay? So those are things that's recommended. Next slide, please. You're going to want to work with a good realtor in terms of finding a home. I mean, you could find one yourself, but I would suggest that you work with a realtor. And when you work with that realtor, you got to tell them the kind of things that you want, the kind of house that you want, okay? Your realtor should have the time, care, and concern to assist you in getting the home that you want. One question that was asked in our 12 o'clock session today was, well, what makes a good realtor? And so you want a realtor that's really going to put in the work for you. After you've told them basically what you're looking for, they're gonna work with you like you're the only client they have. Okay, and so you expect to see those results. And the last point down there about the realtor is compensated by the seller. Well, we learned today at 12. That's the way it used to be, but the laws have changed recently to say that the buyer now also may have to pay some of the commission when a house is sold. There was some kind of lawsuit that was put forth, and so that they changed the laws so that the seller pays a commission and the buyer, but it all has to be agreed upon at the time with your real estate person when you get ready to make that transaction. Okay? So, learned that today. I had already put that point on my presentation before we learned that. Okay? Okay, next slide. In terms of, okay. You want to develop the criteria for the home that you want. I mean, really sit down and think about the kind of home that you want, the amenities that you want, the space that you want, the area that you want. I mean, just the whole neighborhood. Because when you buy a house, you're not buying just that structure. You're buying a lifestyle in a neighborhood, okay? So you need to look at all of that. Look at who are going to be your neighbors in that, you know? Is it a neighborhood where dogs run loose, or everybody has their dog on a leash? There are a lot of things that you have to look at. Look at more than just the structure. And, you know, some people get sort of swayed by when they go see the model home. The model home is beautiful, all right? But when they build your house, then your house is sitting somewhere that might be pleasant to you. You got to know about the lot that they're going to build it on. You got to see if it's enough space between your house and your neighbor's house that you can walk through, you know, or you want more space. A lot of things you have to look at. List your priorities that you want and rank them by importance, because your realtor needs to know what's important to you in the home that you really want, okay? And then, you know, if you're considering several homes, look at the square footage of each home and see what the cost is per square foot, okay? Because you may be about to buy a home where the square footage is more expensive than a home that has more square footage, if you know what I mean. So you can do that comparison. Okay, next slide. So the process starts off when you and your realtor find a home that you say you want to get. You got to submit an offer in writing. That's a contract that the realtor will have you sign to say, I want to buy this home, and I want you to take it to the seller and ask the seller to accept it. And at that time, you will have to write a check of earnest money, because the seller is taking that home off the market for you if he accepts your offer. And so that earnest money could be $1,000. I think it's usually about $1,000 right now. It used to be $500, but I think it's $1,000 right now. Anyone bought a house recently? Pardon me? 1,000? Yes. And your realtor is obligated right then to take that offer to the seller immediately, because especially in these days when sales are so competitive, they have to get to that seller immediately and say, this person wants to buy your home. And yes. For earnest money? Wow. 2 to 5%? So, all right. So if you got a $100,000 house, that's like $2,500. $48 hours to, right. Okay. Okay. Yes. So she said that the earnest money is now on a new building.
But if it's a resale, like if you're buying a house that's already been built, I usually recommend $1,000.
Right.
That's the going price.
But on a new construction,
It could be anywhere from 2 to 5%.
2 to 5%. All right. All right. Y'all hear that? Because homes are pretty expensive these days, especially new homes. You get in a house for $300,000. 5% of that is going to be $15,000. Okay? So, so you got to be ready for that. And so, if the seller accepts it, then we got a contract. The seller may say, nope, you're offering $300,000. I want $350,000. And so when your realtor brings that back to you, you have an option. You can say, well, tell him I'll give him $315,000 for it. That's a whole different contract. It's a whole new contract, okay? And so he takes that to the seller. The seller says, no, I'll take $325. Bring it back to you, and you say, okay, I'll do it, $325. Now, you got a contract. Whenever both parties agree, you have a contract. And that locks you into a lot of terms. When I say you have a contract, then that earnest money, you're obligated to close within 60 days. There are a lot of things you have to do, okay? So when you say you want to get this house and you put a contract, it gets very serious at that point. Because if you should back out, then you lose that earnest money, all right? For reasons not anybody else's fault, okay? Because we still have to go through an appraisal and a house inspection. Those things may fail and allow you to get out of the contract, okay? Okay, next slide. Oh, here we go. Go back. Yeah, no, next slide, thanks. Okay. At the time you have the contract, you got to hire a really good home inspector to make sure that everything is okay with that home for resale or especially a new build, because the houses that they're building new, for some of them anyway that I see, they're building really fast these days. You ride down the road and you might see the base of it. You come back 4 or 5 days later, you see the whole frame up. And you come back next week, the house is built and it's for sale. Okay? That's not, all of them are not that way, but I've seen that. And so my sister was having a house built down in the Low Country where I'm from, and pretty nice house, and I think it was Schumacher Homes. And so they had the frame up, and she was out working in the afternoon, but I came to visit her, and I walked through the house while they were having the house framed up, and almost 1/3 of the board, the lumber boards, were damaged. They were bent. They had some rot in them, and so I just happened to see it and told her, and they replaced all the boards. But if the drywall had gone up over that, nobody would have ever known. Pardon me? Yeah, you need to visit that home as much as possible. Okay? So I sort of went down to the last point on that sheet there. But for major renovations on a house, you need to hire a construction contractor also to be with you, because a contractor will know about structural things, foundation things like that. So if you notice any kind of problem, if a home inspector, if you think a home inspector didn't pick up on it, you might need to get a construction contractor. All right. Make sure that the house appraisal matches the price that you're paying for the house or higher. Now, there may be some times when the appraisal doesn't come in as high as the price you're offering, but you still want to buy that house because you just like that house, you like where it's situated, it's got everything you want, and yeah, the seller wants about $20,000 more than the appraisal, but you have to make that decision whether you want to buy that house or not. Okay? You may be able to negotiate based on that appraisal or any kind of other repairs. If you say that you didn't like the flooring in the house, the carpet is all worn and dirty, the seller may just say, well, I'll give you a check for $10,000 at the closing. I'm not going to go and repair the house now. I'll let you do it, and I'll just give you a check at closing. That's done sometimes. Okay? Okay. And we mentioned another point about visiting the site of a new construction often. Okay? Next slide, please. Okay. Now you're at the point where you're going to be financing that house. The different kinds of loans that you can get. are FHA loans. I spoke about it before. If your credit score is not quite as high as enough for a conventional loan, an FHA loan would kind of help you out. You can get an FHA loan with about a 580 credit score with 3.5% down payment. And you're able to do that because those loans are federally backed. A conventional loan does not have the federal government backing those loans. So that's why they ask you for more. They're always leery that you're going to default on your loan, so you got to have some kind of insurance. So the VA loan, those of you lucky enough to be veterans and such, you can get a home with no down payment and no private mortgage insurance. A USDA loan is a loan for people who buy homes in designated rural areas. And those kind of loans also have a zero down payment. You would have to check with the mortgage company to see exactly what homes, what areas have those kind of homes that would qualify for a USDA loan. And then, of course, the conventional loan, where they're going to require at least 5% and maybe higher for a home. Then nobody is backing up that loan if you default on the loan. So they want you to pay a higher percent interest, and they want you to pay an additional fee monthly called private mortgage insurance. That's to ensure that in case you default on the loan, they won't be left but losing a lot of money. Next slide. There are some programs for first-time home buyers. First-time home buyers, there's a South Carolina Housing Finance and Development Authority that can help you with first-time home buyers. And that first-time home buyer can be someone who bought a home for the first time or haven't or been without a home for 3 years. You may have bought a home in the past, but then you've been without a home for 3 years, and so now you can qualify for a first-time home buyers program. They give you housing counseling, assistance with the down payment, and help you get a better interest rate based on your credit scores. The other organization that does the same thing is called NACA, N-A-C-A, okay? And both those phone numbers are there. And they've helped a lot of people be able to get in a home that may not have enough money for the down payment, may have some challenges with their credit and their credit scores, okay? So if you know anyone that needs some help with that, you can recommend that for them. Next slide. Okay. When it comes to mortgage rates, you can have a fixed rate mortgage, you can have what's called an adjustable rate mortgage, and sometimes there's a jumbo rate. Fixed rate mortgage is the one that's most popular because once you get a mortgage loan on your home, you will have the same payment and with the same rate until the home is paid for or you refinance the home, okay? And so those of us who bought homes, like my wife and I bought our home 14 years ago, and I think we got it at 5%, but then a few years later the interest rates went down and we refinanced and got a 3% interest rate. So the interest rate currently in the nation right now is a little above 6%, I think. Am I right? 6%? Yeah. And they were a lot higher than that, but the Feds cut the rate, and so the rates are down to about 6%. All right, so the adjustable rates, you got to really be careful getting an adjustable rate loan. With an adjustable rate, the adjustable rate will generally be lower than the fixed rate. And so that attracts some people to say, well, I want to save money, and so I'm going to get this adjustable rate now, and then 5 years after that, I'll refinance when the rates go down. But if you do that 5 years from now, they might not go down. They may go up. That 5 for 5 there means that you got a rate that you're going to pay for 5 years, and then it's adjustable after the 5th year. The 5 for 1 says you got a rate for 5 years, and it's adjustable after the 1st year. okay? And so a lot of people got in trouble with the adjustable rates in the early 2000s after when the real estate bubble burst because the rates went up so high they couldn't afford to pay for their homes, okay? And then a jumbo rate is something you really want to be careful about because what you're saying, you're telling the mortgage or bank that I want this rate. It's a low rate, you know. It's a 2 or 3% rate, and in 5 years I'll just refinance the whole house. I'll pay the whole thing. And so when that 5 years comes, then you're expected to negotiate a whole new loan. Well, what happens if in the 4th or 5th year, one of you lose your job, and now you can't pay that jumbo loan because the bank says, okay, you owe us the whole amount of this loan now, then you're going to be in some trouble, probably some big trouble, because if you don't have the right income, credit, you won't get approved. Okay? So you got to be real careful with that. The safe route is really a fixed rate loan. Okay? Okay, next slide. So, as I stated before, your house payment is basically composed of your principal. And the principal is what takes your balance down each month. The interest rate, if you have a 5% interest rate, the interest rate on the current balance, okay, divided by 12 for that month. And so that's the interest that's charged to your home. Your taxes, the property taxes. You know, if you're in Richland County or Lexington County, they have a tax that they tax you at each year, and it's divided by 12. And so you send that payment to within your home payment. They put those payments in escrow, and then they send the county a check for your taxes, and the same thing for your home insurance. Whenever you hear your school district say that we're going to increase the millage so we can build another school or build some stadiums, that means your taxes are going up. Okay? It's not a bad thing, because, you know, the better off our schools are, the more valuable our homes are. Okay? So, but with the conventional loan, there's this private mortgage insurance, and it can average about 2% of your home loan, and that's an extra charge every month because you got a conventional loan, and the bank is saying, "I'm not sure I trust whether you won't default," and so you have to pay that PMI insurance until your home gets to have about 20% equity in it. If you had put a 20% down payment on that house, you would not have to pay any PMI, okay? But if you don't pay 20% down, then you have to wait until your principal balance gets to be 80% of the loan. When it gets to be 80% of the loan, then you can call your mortgage or bank up and say, hey, I've met my requirement. You need to take this PMI charge off of my payment. And then they will do that. Or if you didn't call them and your principal balance goes down to 78%, they're supposed to automatically stop the PMI charges for you. Right? But it's one thing that you're going to just want to remember. Okay? Yes?
Example, and say you paid $175 for your house, it's appreciated in value to $250, and you owe $150 on the loan. Could you have it reappraised and then qualify to get the PMI?
Yeah, good question.
Okay.
Good question. And that's go to the next slide, please. And okay, go to the next one for a minute. Yeah, in canceling your PMI. Yes, you can. And there are various ways you can get that canceled by, one of the things is to, of course, pay down the 20%. You can refinance your mortgage such that you would have 80% equity, all right? You can make renovations to your home to increase the home's value. So now the house is worth more, and now you have the 20% equity in your home. That can get rid of it. And then reappraising your home, okay? And so, yeah, all those things. So you're going to have to really look out for that, and because you want to get rid of that charge. That's just an extra charge every month on your house, okay? Go back one slide now. Okay. So that PMI is required with a conventional loan. It's not federally guaranteed. It's when the home payment is less than 20% and when you have less than 20% equity in your home. So, okay? And also with your property taxes, a lot of you probably already know this, but once you become a senior at 65, then you can go down to the assessor's office and ask for the homestead exemption, and because they will charge you a lesser percentage of taxes than before you were 65. But you got to go on and make sure they give you that. Okay? See, it's not all bad being a senior, A lot of benefits. Get that 10% off at the restaurants and all that. Okay, next slide. And the next one. Okay. Amortization is basically a way to look at if you decided you wanted to pay your home off early, you can go get your cell phone and Google amortization calculator and put the amount of the loan that you have right now, the number of years that you want to pay it off. If you say, I want to pay it off in 7 years, and then put in your taxes, insurance, and the start date and the interest rate, it'll tell you this is how much you need to pay each month to pay your home off in 7 years. The amortization schedule is a schedule where it shows you each month of the number of years that you have. You can look at each month and watch the balance go down. Anytime you send extra payments with your house payment, you're meeting the payment, and then the extra money goes toward bringing down your principal balance. Okay? So with this wealth training, we said that we want to save money, we want to get ourselves out of debt, and when we finally get ourselves out of debt, then we got to make a decision with the extra money that we're getting. Are we going to invest part of that, pay the house down? That's a decision you have to make. Because, like in my case, if my interest rate is 3%, every time I send extra money to pay off that home, I'm making 3%. But if I had it invested in mutual funds, I might be making 8 or 9%. So, but you just have to make that decision. I saw one question over here first. Yes.
Before you do it, because a lot of times they'll put that payment towards your next month's payment. So you have to be sure that that's what they're doing. A lot of them require you to call and make that arrangement.
That's a good point you just made. Basically, when you do your mortgaging contract, you got to make sure that there are no prepayment penalties, that you can prepay that house off if you want to. So that's one thing to really take a note of. Yes.
And piggybacking on what she said, you want to make sure that you're letting them know it's towards the principal and not an extra payment. Because if you do that, if you make one extra payment towards the principal a year, right? One extra payment, you can shave off at least 10 years of a house payment, so you can pay it off in 20 instead of 30. And you don't have to pay that all at one time. You could break it up and just say, hey, put this extra $100 towards the principal for, for this year. Also, yeah, that was about it.
Yeah.
Shaving off the years.
And believe me, one of the things that might go in your decision to pay off your home early, you save thousands of dollars. I mean, you save a lot of money by paying it off early, because really that 3%, if you got a $300,000 house, that 3% is going toward 300,000. Okay, so as opposed to having it in an investment. So, you know, it's best to try and pay your home off in 15 or 20 years. Can't always do that. You know, you got to look out for your household, like we talked about, your house, your comfort zone. You know, if you have to pay for a home 30 years, good, no problem. You pay for it in 30 years, and you'll have the home and that equity after 30 years. But if you can pay for it early, just send a little bit extra money each month with each payment, or like she said, once a year. You know, you're gonna earn a lot of money by saving the interest on that. Okay? So, next slide. So after you've gone through all that, you got the financing and everything, now it's time for the closing. And so the closing is where they basically wrap everything up, have you sign a lot of documents, and give you the keys to the house. You got to make sure that of everything about the house before closing, because after the closing, nobody wants to even talk with you, all right? If anything's wrong with it, that's too bad. You got to make sure everything is right at closing. If the seller's in, if there's some particular things about the house and the seller's in town, have them show you what's what, okay? Do a thorough walkthrough. I mean a thorough walkthrough. You know, I know you're excited about the house, especially a new house and everything like this, but, you know, go over there at nighttime, go over there after a big rainstorm, see where the water is draining. I mean, look at all of that stuff. Because if a board is squeaking and the floor is moving after you bought the house, you're going to be responsible for it. Okay? Okay. Is that the last slide? Okay. Then, of course, you're going to review all your closing documents. And we talked about making sure I ask questions about the prepayment penalty and paying it off. Okay? Get all your financial numbers. Make sure you're familiar with all your financial numbers in your settlement statement. And keep all that information and make sure and file it so you can get back to it. Okay? So, yes.
So, there was another mortgage type that you see on the commercials where, and I cannot think of.
Is it reverse mortgage?
Yes.
Thank you. I meant
Yes.
to talk about that. Yeah, I meant to talk about that.
That's right.
Because when we talked about getting a home equity loan, getting a refinance, a lot of people, well, I don't know about a lot, well, I guess a lot of people do get reverse mortgages because that's why you've seen the commercials. And the commercials make it sound really good to get a reverse mortgage. You got to be really, really careful of that, because what a reverse mortgage does is that you may have your home paid for or partially paid for, and they tell you, we can give you money. We can give you a lot of money right now that you can use to spend, live your life, enjoy yourself, you know, and you don't have to make any more payments. Most of the time it's when homeowners are still paying on their homes, but they're having a tough time getting by with household expenses. And so they say, well, let's just get a reverse mortgage, because the man said he'll give us $50,000 or $75,000, and we don't even have to make any more payments. And so they do that. And so they get that money, and they spend it on whatever, all right? Could be cruises, I don't know what, but they spend it. And so they have the house until they pass away. But then when they pass away, then they don't have a house to leave to the next generation. The bank says, okay, the house is mine now. And so the bank says, now if your children want it, All they got to do is repay the money that we gave them, plus the whole balance of the loan and other fees, and it's some amount that they probably wouldn't be able to pay. So they lose that house. Okay, I gave the testimony at 12 that I had a brother-in-law that did that, and it did not turn out good. Did not turn out good. Pardon me? Question?
I have a friend that her mom did that, and I mean, it's sad. I think they kind of target older people when they do that, knowing that they're the ones, they don't understand what they're getting into when they make that agreement. And so now her mom's in a home, and she's in the mom's house, but when her mom passes, she's not going to be able to afford it.
Yeah. So I would ask you to stay away from that. Now, there may be certain circumstances. I mean, some people don't have anybody to leave anything to. You may have a health situation where the doctor says you got to have this surgery for $100,000, or else you're gonna die, and you have to make a decision where you're gonna get the money from to pay for that. So it's not absolute that you shouldn't do it, but it should be a very, very last resort kind of thing to do. Reverse mortgages, right? Plus, whenever you see a lot of commercials about it, it can't be good. Because they're the ones who are benefiting from it the most, not you. Yes, Pastor.
I have a question, Deacon Williams, but before the question, permit me to make a comment on something that was shared at the 12 noon. I pointed out that I have experienced far more times than I would like to have done seniors in their late 70s and 80s, upon their passing, the children find out that there is yet a mortgage on their home, though they have been living in that home for 40 years. That happens often. The parent passes, late 70s, 80s, living in a house 40 years, and they find out they still owe $30,000 or $35,000 on the home. So it was suggested that we talk with our senior parents. Talk with them, because there are persons who will take advantage of them by offering them something where there is nothing in it for them. Talk with your parents, elderly parents. Now, my question is somewhat related to that when it comes to rental properties. Some of you may know that I am the primary caregiver for my sister, 88 years old. She has dementia. May a year ago, we placed her into a retirement community. And she has about 18 rental properties, and it was kind of like a mission, and it's only about $500 a month. Well, prior to us realizing that my sister had dementia, the tenants were taking advantage of my sister, telling her they had paid when they had not paid, and there were no receipts that they could produce when we learned of it, indicating that they had actually paid. There are two schools of thoughts about rental properties, and which is the favorable one. Some say God is not making any more land. If you have some property that you own, rent it. Others say it's a headache renting property. Sell the property, take the money, and invest the money. Which is really the best of those two options?
Well, I don't think there's a perfect answer to your question with that, because I've rented a home for several years, and a couple of times, the tenant, I had to evict a tenant maybe about 2 times, because when they stop paying the rent for a couple of months, they have rights to stay there for about another month or 2 before they can be evicted. But I would suggest anybody that's renting a property to use a property management company. the rent through the property management company, because they take care of everything in terms of collecting the rent. When the tenant stops paying, they will then exercise all the legal papers to have them evicted and such like that. Of course, that's a good tax deduction for you, in addition to making rental income. And those people who have rental properties now, they're making a lot of money. If you have a rental home that's paid off, you're making a lot of money. Now, in Richland County, one of the things that hurt me in Richland County, boy, they charge a lot of property tax. On the house we lived in, we were paying about $900, almost $1,000 a year in property taxes. Then when we bought another house and rented that house, the property taxes on the rental house was $3,800 because they charge property taxes on the second. They said that's a second home for you, and they charge you a lot of taxes on that second home. But it's still a good investment. It's still a good investment.
Real
and when we talked about investments, and Calvin Elam presented, it's best to diversify your investments. So if you can, rental homes are good. Rental homes are good. And like we talked about Airbnb, if you want to buy a condo down at Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head, Kiowa, that's someplace you can enjoy, and also you can lease out, pass on to your generation behind you so that they can enjoy it. And so there's some benefits to that. All right. Was it two questions or just that one?
Just that one.
Okay.
So it's best to keep your rental property.
Yes. But I really would suggest having a property management company handle those, because it gets very stressful. You don't even want to try and deal with the tenant, all right? Because they ain't gonna want to pay you. They're gonna get nasty.
Particularly when you can't evict nobody, Deacon Williams. You can't evict somebody got a little child.
And
they haven't paid in 6 months.
And regarding
Pastor, we gonna pay.
And regarding the pastor's comments about the seniors with property, and talking to them, our estate planning session is going to be very important that you come and listen, because estate planning is so needed right now. There are a lot of things involved with estate planning. You need to be talking to your sisters, brothers, mothers, grandparents if they're still living, and try and get them to have the right documents in place, have their wills done, and living wills and all that stuff done. You need to know if there are liens on that property. Sometimes through the years, a lien might be placed on that property because you might have skipped one doctor's bill that you didn't pay, and they put a lien on your property, okay? And all kinds of stuff like that. Yes, ma'am.
Pastor Jackson.
It's right over here.
Pastor Jackson, just a bit of advice. You need a management company because you will let everybody live free.
He will too.
But let me tell you the scary part about that. As a conservator, I have a fiduciary responsibility. I just learned this last month, that I cannot allow anyone to stay in my sister's property as her conservator or POA free.
That's right.
I'm held liable for that.
I want to piggyback off
shape.
of Pastor
I'm in
Jackson's.
Bad shape. I'm in bad shape right now.
Oh,
People don't want to pay. You know what I'm saying? I know the pastor's not going to put me out.
Lord.
And my sister's not going to be able to stay where she's staying if we don't get the rent anymore.
I want to piggyback off of Pastor Jackson's question. So in reference to the Airbnb, VRBO, kind of more vacation rental versus having a tenant living in your property, which one is more beneficial, do you think? And then secondly, if you do go more the vacation rental route, is there still a property management that handles that for you, or is that just for your live-in tenant?
Oh, yeah. If you're talking about an Airbnb, especially in a resort area, you want a property management company. If you want to go to Hilton Head or Kiowa right now and You go on the internet and you look at this property and say, "Oh yeah, that's a nice one."
Right, because the majority of my age group, we're going to go to an Airbnb or VRBO before we go to the hotel for sure.
Right.
The majority of my age group, that's where we're going to go first. And so that's what I was really wondering was that.
Right.
So you would suggest the vacation rental over a home rental or both?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Because, you know, a home rental is going to be consistent income every month for you. You know, one thing that was attractive about the home that we rented, it was near Fort Jackson. And so we rented it out to military people several different times. They're very dependable, military people. Oh man, if you had a home or apartment around USC, you got it made. Any college, if you can buy a property around any college, okay, you need to buy it because it will rent forever. Okay. We know all this stuff now, you know. I went to South Carolina State University. If I had bought one around Claflin or South Carolina State, oh, man, I could have been rich in getting rent from there, okay? All right? Okay, they're telling me that the time is up. So thank you all. Make sure and come to the estate planning session that we have. I don't know if we have an exact date for that. That's going to be very important. Thank you.
If you've been blessed by God and would like to be a to evangelism, there are boxes on the side. You can drop $1, $20. They would be most appreciative of whatever you give. Let's stand on our feet. We'll remind you of the ministry fair on Sunday. Baptism will be held, and then the ministry fair is on Sunday. And following the 11 o'clock worship service, find out a place of service as you look at the various ministries Brooklyn tries to offer. Pray for me. I got a preach funeral tomorrow at 11 a.m. Ms. Jelena Moats. I got to preach a funeral Friday at 12 noon. Simon Simmons got to preach a memorial sermon Saturday to go home. So pray for me. And then my optometrist, Dr. Lonnie Randolph, died. Some of you from Columbia may know of Dr. Lonnie Randolph, and that funeral will be held here at Brooklyn next Friday, November 12 noon. Let's bow our heads in prayer. God our Father, thank you for this very informative session. Thank you for reinforcing some things of which we have known, and then shedding light on some things of which we have not known well. Thank you for Deacon Leon Williams sharing his experiences and his knowledge with us that we might be the better in this component of becoming wealthy. I pray, God, that we will receive it and use it and pass it on to others through our experiences with them and concerns they might have relative to owning homes. I pray that we will continue to encourage from what we've learned persons to move from renting to owning. We thank you for your presence, and as we depart from one another, let your presence abide with us till we meet again. In Jesus' wonderful name we pray, amen, and thank God.